This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's Motor Week. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677 or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss. If you'd like to talk about an automobile or something with an engine in it, the number is 844-885-4677. We can talk about anything that deals with mechanical stuff, engines and cars and trucks and you name it. 844-885-4677. All right, now, a week ago, we got a new puppy and a new Outlook. Now, in 1 week, I've come to realize how much effort is involved in keeping puppies and pets, in general, safe. Now, if you're a pet lover, here are a couple of tips regarding pets and cars that might save you serious grief. We have 2 dogs, Precious, who is 3, and now puppy Izzy, who is a whopping 9 weeks old and is so playful it's hard to imagine. Now, I love animals, and I often tell you about the basics of pets and cars. Those tips mostly can concentrate on not leaving dogs, cats, or babies in hot or cold cars. Keeping in mind that on warm days, if you close your pet in the car, it can get hot enough to kill your beloved furry companion in just a few minutes. It's a gruesome, painful death for your defenseless furball. So never leave your pet in an unattended car. But the dangers for pets around cars go way beyond just too hot or too cold. Consider your car cleaning chemicals. Waxes, polishes, and cleaners often have a delightful, fruity smell, which is intended to make them more pleasant for us humans to work with, but can make them smell like a food treat to our pets. There are far too many pets poisoned by automotive chemicals. Bet you never considered how your pet is often gets sick from car-related products. Take things like oil, antifreeze, and many lubricants. A guy in a pet store told us to make sure we keep both dogs away from antifreeze as it is poisonous to dogs. Duh. Everyone knows that. So most pet owners make sure they keep their pets away from liquid antifreeze or chemicals they might drink. But wait just a minute. Do you really think the only way for a pet to be poisoned is to drink or eat an automotive or household chemical? If you do, you need to learn how many pet poisonings really happen. Example, you're changing your oil and you manage to spill some oil on the driveway. You clean it up, which makes everything safe, right? Wrong. Animals don't just ingest oil or other chemicals in liquid form. Actually, they often walk through the residue left after you cleaned up your spill. Then they come in the house, and at some point their feet start to itch. And that's from the chemical. The chemical that they walk through. Now, your pet's response to that is to do something we've all seen them do time and time again. Lick their feet. But licking allows the chemical residue from their feet to be ingested, and you have a sick pet. Not good, not necessarily deadly, but who wants to see their pet sick? Another thing that is almost totally overlooked is burns from hot parts on the car. One of the worst is the catalytic converter, which can be several hundred degrees after a high-speed run. Now your happy, romping pet is running in circles under, over, and around various things, including your car. And as they dash under the car, they hit the blazing hot catalytic converter and get a nasty burn, usually on their ears or tail, and again, not usually life-threatening, but very painful. Plus, you may not figure out how it even happened. Finally, cats love to sleep in warm places, and after your car has been driven, the engine bay is just such a warm place. The cat climbs up onto the top of the engine from the bottom of the car and falls asleep. You come out, start the car, and all those sharp moving parts slice and dice your poor cat. Horrific at best. Keep an eye on your pets and keep them away from cars. Can't stress that enough. So many dangers for pets around cars. Now, also having a pet in a car, well, that can be dangerous for you. Now, one of the things that a lot of people really don't like, they want to see their pet moving around inside the car, especially dogs. Dogs like to hang their head out the window and different things like that. Well, keep in mind that it would be horrific if you were in a crash. Now, think about it. In a crash, airbag might deploy. Pet is in the front seat. Airbag literally destroys pet because it's coming out of the dash at a couple 100 miles an hour. Your pet is moving forward at whatever speed you're traveling at, so you're going 50 miles an hour. So pet is moving forward at 50 miles an hour in this crash, and the airbag is coming out of the dash at roughly 240 or some such miles per hour. That is a combined speed of almost 300 miles an hour. Your pet is going to wind up being not much more than jello in a situation like that. Horrible, horrible situation. So your pet should be restrained, should be in the back seat, and not romping around in the back seat. You know, they make harnesses and tethers and so on to keep the pet in position in the car. Now consider that same 50-mile-an-hour crash. Say your pet, say we've got a dog or a cat that weighs 10 pounds, and you're moving ahead at 50 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you hit something. And the car slows down almost instantly, but the untethered pet in the back seat, well, it keeps moving forward. And at that speed and that weight, the force of that pet moving forward is in the hundreds or sometimes thousands of pounds, and it hits you. Now, you've got a real serious situation here, because at this point, your pet is probably destroyed, but even more to the point, so are you. You are probably dead at this point because of the force of that pet hitting you in the back of the head or in the back, sometimes in the seat, who knows, but especially in the head, which can break your neck and you're in trouble. So there are a lot of hazards to pets and cars and so on. Use a little common sense and don't just look at it that, oh, well, nothing's ever going to happen to me. All this stuff only happens to the other person. Well, you know, there's going to come a day when you are the other person. All right, let's go to the phone and let's see. Mike from Orlando, 14, what is it, Transit Connect. Mike, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. How involved is it? I've got a brake bulb indicator, and it was confirmed my left brake light's out. How involved is that? And the reason I ask is because I had a headlight out on this thing before and, took it to the dealership for an oil change. I said, I figured I'll pay $20, $30 to get it fixed. The guy comes back and says, oh, it's the wire assembly. It's going to be $800. And luckily it was caught under the warranty. They were able to take care of it. But I just got the indicator last night and figured I'd give you a buzz and see how involved the brake light would be to repair that.
Typically nothing to it. Usually a couple of screws and the lamp assembly comes out of the back of the vehicle and you snap the bulb out and snap a new one in. As far as needing a major wire harness or something like that, that would be almost unheard of. And even if
well, that's what I thought.
yeah,
On
a new vehicle,
headlight. Yeah.
and even if there was a wiring problem, $800, I presume they were going to replace an entire sub harness, and that's not the way it's done anyplace except in a dealership. Out here
right.
in the real world, what we do is we would simply take a short piece out wherever the problem is, and solder a new piece in with shrink wrap to waterproof it and stuff like that. Or if it is the socket, which is relatively common on lots of cars, we would just put a new socket on the end of the wire harness. And typically repairs like that are under $100.
Perfect.
So
Sounds
I
good.
wouldn't
appreciate
suspect
the
anything even close to something like that on, especially twice on the same vehicle.
Right. Yeah. No, I just wanted to see if you had any tips or tricks before I got into it. So
No,
I appreciate the input.
Like I say, typically a couple of screws and the lamp assembly comes out, and you may on that one even have an access port in the back of it. Some of those have a plastic cover inside, and there'll be a little flap that you can pull open and just reach in and twist the bulb out, and good to go.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Pat. I appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more stuff about cars coming up here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Never drive with a bad attitude. I know that's hard with so many stupid, distracted, aggressive, and just plain rude drivers on the road, but it really is the safe thing to do. I drive a lot, and I used to see reckless, rude, or aggressive drivers maybe once a month. But today, it seems like every other driver is doing something stupid. When it was sporadic, it wasn't so hard to deal with, but now it seems like there's always an idiot 3 feet from my rear bumper or weaving into my lane or cutting me off. Distracted? Probably. Dangerous? Absolutely. But there's nothing to do except drive defensively and not aggravate other drivers. Much as I'd like to, I don't middle finger the offending driver, and definitely don't hit my brakes to scare a tailgater. Initially, these situations may be simple mistakes, but an aggressive response to a mistake can escalate it into a personal confrontation, which can easily turn into road rage. Unfortunately, you have no idea which one of these idiots will try to hurt you with their car, a weapon, or their fists. Also, never make direct eye contact with the offending driver. If you're the offender, be courteous and get out of the way. Whether it's a mistake or intentional aggression, remember, back down, yield, let it go. It takes brains to overcome anger. Use your brain. Be smart. Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe, too, because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
For those of you enjoying Goss's Garage on TuneIn.com, please note our new showtime every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And we repeat at 1. Now, you can't call in at 1 because it's a pre-recorded show, but you can hear what we talked about this morning at 9. All right. 844-885-4677. If you have a question, a comment, anything at all about cars or something with an engine, give me a call, please. Chris from Gaithersburg, Maryland, 2011 Honda Accord. Welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hi, Pat. Actually, it's a 2001 Accord, but I changed to full synthetic oil on the engine, and shortly I started noticing some leakage from both crank seals, and I was just wondering if it's got a lot of miles, but if maybe if I went back to the conventional, if it might stop leaking, or if it just happened by chance happen, or is that normal for synthetic?
No, it's not normal at all. Synthetic cannot cause a leak. Now, what it can do is if there's a lot of sludge maybe built up in the seal, which some Hondas are prone to that, the synthetic may have a more aggressive additive package, cleans the sludge away, and now the seal relaxes a little bit and you get a leak. But typically what it boils down to is that there was some seepage there, not leakage, but seepage. And because synthetic flows much, much better than conventional, what was seepage originally, more oil can flow through that initial gap, and you see it as leakage. So that's what I would expect, and maybe by going back to conventional oil, you might do away with it.
Okay. Do they make the synthetic that have the seal conditioner or the seal sweller that you talk about sometimes?
Well, yeah, that would be a high mileage oil. All of the high mileage oils typically have more seal sweller than regular oils, non-high mileage oils. And the thing you have to be careful of there is, if you switch to one of those, you pretty much have to stay with a high mileage oil.
Okay. Also, on the same car, it has sort of a hard shift. It's the V6 model. They had a transmission recall at one point, but it has a hard shift from first into second. And I want to find out, is that something that maybe one of the solenoids could be changed out, or is that usually just mean the transmission's just on its way out?
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily mean the tranny's on the way out. And one of the more common things is that you need an update to the computer program. And second to that is that there's a shift solenoid that's hanging up. And what happens here is that everything inside the automatic transmission works on pressure. And if you have a solenoid that's hanging up or a sensor that isn't reading properly, you may have to build too much pressure before the sensor or the solenoid reacts. And that means that you've got this tremendous pressure that has built up. It's like opening a dam, and wham, you get this hard shift. So in most cases, I would say what we see here in the shop, probably 85–90% of the cases are going to be either programming or a sensor or a solenoid.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Take care. All right. 844-885-4677. Give me a call. We'll talk about it if it deals with cars. Jim wrote me. He says, I'm preparing to change the spark plugs on a 12 Dodge Grand Caravan 3.6. When replacing the upper intake and plenum gaskets, do I need to use Permatex or any type of sealant on the gaskets? Are there any special procedures I need to know about, as this will be my first time changing the spark plugs? As always, I really appreciate your professional advice, and as a retired veteran, I appreciate what you do for our vets. All right, well, here's the deal. Gaskets are made to seal things. Gaskets. Now, unless you have some specific instruction that comes with the gasket telling you to put a certain type of gasket sealer in a specific part of the gasket, do not use gasket sealers. They cause leaks. Now, I know that sounds contradictory, but keep in mind that gasket sealers, they originated back in the day when gaskets were nowhere near as complex or as durable and everything as they are today. Also, back in the day, you were dealing with cast iron intake manifolds and tin valve covers and different things like that. And these things were used to take up space that the gasket couldn't take up. All right, so now what we have is that we have aluminum parts. We have an intake manifold that's made of aluminum that is going to be mated to an aluminum air plenum, the upper part of the intake manifold. And these are very highly machined. And they're machined in such a manner that there's a certain roughness to them. Now, this is what's called RA, or roughness average, and there is an actual measurement for it. And for each gasket, there is a certain roughness that is built into the two parts that are going to mate together. All right, so a couple of things here. Number one, you don't want to take a grinder or something like that to clean the old gasket off, because what you'll do is grind the roughness out of the aluminum, and you may make it too slippery for the gasket to seal properly. So use a proper method of cleaning the old gasket away. Then, if the instructions with the gasket say put a sealant at point A or point B or whatever it might be, and to use a certain type of sealant, because there are many different types of silicone sealants, and they're designed for different applications, different parts of the engine, and so on. Only use the gasket sealant when it is absolutely needed. Now, if you don't heed that, what you will do is you'll wind up with the gasket sealant causing leaks. And one of the reasons for that is that most of you do not use the gasket sealant right. So you're supposed to build a bead with it, very fine bead, usually about 1/8 of an inch. Then you let that bead cure. Now, depending on the type of sealant you're using, that might be 5 minutes or it might be an hour. But whatever the instructions say, you let it cure. Then you put the two parts together and torque them to the proper specification. Now, if you don't do it that way, you just put the raw sealant in there, slap things together and start tightening it up, all that happens is the sealant gets squeezed out of the joint between the gasket and the parts, and you have no sealant where it needs to be. So it has to firm up a little bit so it can't just be squeezed out as you tighten it, and that way you get some benefit from it, but only use it where it is recommended. Now, you'll find a lot of applications where that's the only thing that's recommended. They don't make a gasket for a lot of oil pans and valve covers and things like that. You have to build this bead of silicone sealant and make your own gasket. So that is something that we see constantly here in the shop. A lot of technicians are guilty of slapping this crap all over everything, and it just does not work like you would think it would work. So keep that in mind. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back on Goss's Garage.
Operators are standing by to take your call for Pat at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
I get lots of air filter questions, and one of the most common deals with why air filters need to be replaced so often. Well, actually, they usually don't, yet many drivers wind up buying a new air filter at every oil change, which is utterly ridiculous. Drivers say techs tell them if they don't buy a new air filter, they'll waste a lot of gas. Maybe that statement comes from ignorance or maybe dishonesty, but either way, you lose. Decades ago, dirty air filters did waste gas, but today, not so much. Cars now use a sensor to measure the air coming through the air filter, and computers to mix exactly the right amount of gas to match that air. So even though a dirty air filter reduces airflow into the engine, it doesn't affect gas mileage because the computer is always precisely matching fuel to the incoming air. In other words, a dirty filter means less air, and less air means less gas, so there's never an imbalance between air and fuel. Certainly when a filter gets really, really dirty, it can cause performance problems, but even then it may not affect gas mileage. So how long do air filters last? Unless you drive in really dusty conditions, air filters usually last 30 to 60,000 miles. Overselling of air filters is an enormous problem, and the best way not to be taken is to learn how to check your own air filter and check it twice a year. I get lots of questions about BG products, many about specific products or services like, is BG44K really that good, or are BG transmission, cooling system, and power steering flushes actually necessary? But most popular of all, do I use BG products in my cars? Well, the answer to all of those questions is yes. A regular schedule of BG flushes and chemicals will deliver the longest possible life from all the lubricated and fuel delivery parts on your vehicles. And do I use BG products? You bet I do. I drive nice cars, and I drive a lot. Plus, my live radio and TV shows mean that my cars have to be absolutely reliable. A no start from dirty fuel injectors or a failed transmission just isn't acceptable in my life. Remember, deposits and dirty fluids ruin expensive parts. For reliability like I demand, visit one of the quality shops that sell BG products and perform BG services. To find a BG professional near you, bgfindashop.com.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
Folks, this portion of Goss's Garage is brought to you by BG products, and yes, I do use them in my cars, always, religiously, and yes, I do sell them in both of my shops. So no secrets, no hidden agenda or anything like that. Just great products that I 100% believe in. 844-885-4677 is the number if you want to talk about something that deals with something mechanical, like an engine or, well, a car, whatever. Give me a call, 844-885-4677. Now, Bill sends me an email. I think he has me mixed up with somebody else because it's opening, "Hey, handsome." Now, obviously, he doesn't know me or he's never seen me on TV or whatever, because he would know that I am anything but handsome. Anyway, he says, "Hey, handsome, there's an old..." I guess that could mean other things too. Anyway, he says, "There's an old saying, if you haven't flushed your tranny by X number of miles, don't." The theory being you may cause more trouble than you'd be avoiding. Well, okay, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because I don't subscribe to beyond a certain point an X number of miles. Like high mileage oil is probably the biggest offender of all on this, is that they say 75,000 miles, you gotta use high mileage oil. Well, that's hogwash, because no two engines, or in this case, no two transmissions, will experience the same amount of wear at a given mileage. Now, granted, we give you mileages and so on not to exceed for your service intervals and things like that, but that's primarily so that you don't go beyond that, and so that you qualify for various warranties and so on, like the BG lifetime warranty on the transmission. All right, now, because no two transmissions are going to have the same amount of wear at the same mileage, we can't say that at 150,000 miles it doesn't make sense to flush. We can't say at 175,000 miles it doesn't make sense to flush. Yet technicians are always doing this. My perspective on this is to evaluate the condition of the fluid in the transmission and the condition of the transmission itself. You see, you have to know what you're working with, because we have had cars in the shop here where at 40,000 miles, we wouldn't even think of flushing the transmission because the transmission is in such poor condition. Fluid all nasty and burned up because somebody had overheated the transmission, possibly with towing or doing something really extreme with it. Yet the other side of that is that we have found 300,000 mile transmissions. We felt perfectly happy to flush because they were in that good condition. So it isn't miles that determines whether you flush a transmission or not. It is the condition of the fluid and the condition of the transmission. If the fluid is all nasty and burnt up and so on, well, the transmission's on its way out. But if the fluid still has some of its original color and original smell and so on, and the transmission functions properly, then there's no reason at all not to flush it. And flushing can double or triple or quadruple the life of the transmission. Just make sure that you get a flush and not a fluid exchange. A lot of shops will have a quick service lane. Now, a quick service lane, whether it's in a chain store or a dealership or an independent garage, whatever it might be, quick service means quick service, usually half hour or less. So what does that mean about a flush? A flush normally takes an hour and a half or 2 hours. Well, that typically means that you've got somebody that's calling a fluid exchange a flush and charging you for a flush, but doing a fluid exchange, which really doesn't clean anything, really doesn't do any good for the transmission, and in many cases may actually aid in the demise of the transmission. So make sure you're getting an actual transmission flush, not a transmission fluid exchange. Now, the other thing, how you drive the car has a big effect on how long the car will last, how long the transmission will last, and so on. The enemy of automotive parts is heat, especially automatic transmissions. Now, for all of you who think that the next Grand Prix is at the next stoplight, and when that light turns green, you've got foot on the floorboard, and you're going like hell to the next stoplight. Have you accomplished anything? Have you won any awards? Did you get a trophy for that? Why in the world, when you're traffic light to traffic light or stop sign to stop sign, do you want your foot on the floor? You know, for the most part, cars don't feel that thrilling these days as far as acceleration is concerned. And you can cut the life of your transmission at least 50% by this foot on the floorboard acceleration all the time. Most everything on an automobile has what's called a duty cycle. And that duty cycle is determined by how many times the part does whatever it does. So in this case, the transmission has to shift X number of times, and its duty cycle is going to be based on, number one, how many shifts it has made in its lifetime. But the second part of that is the duty cycle is determined, and duty cycle is nothing more than the life expectancy. Duty cycle is also determined by how much work the part does during each one of the things that it has to do. So in this case, the transmission has to shift. Now, as you're accelerating hard, the transmission is working hard. And that means that its duty cycle, its life expectancy, is going to be shortened because you're making it do more work through each thing that it does. So it's real simple. It's the number of times it does whatever it does and how much work it is doing during each one of those repetitions. So driving gently can make just a world of difference in how long your engine, your transmission, your differential, all of these various parts under the car last. So that's how we look at that. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Space Saver spare tires sure do look silly, but if you use them properly, they will get you home safely. Now, a common problem with them is low air pressure. Spares are buried in the trunk and no one ever seems to check their pressure. Plus, they typically require much higher pressure than your regular tires. Also, Space Saver spares have limits on how far and how fast you can drive on them. Bottom line, always read and follow the caution warnings on their labels and sidewalls. Oh yeah, don't be one of those poor schmucks with a flat tire and a flat spare. Check your spare once a month. While checking the spare, look at the jack handle, and the lug wrench to be sure everything is there and in working order. The best spare tire in the world is useless without the tools to put it on the car. Some cars may even require special lug nuts to mount the spare. If those special lug nuts are missing, you will have no safe way to use your spare. Life changes at a ferocious pace these days, especially when it comes to maintaining our cars. For example, Automatic transmissions now need regular fluid flushes. Transmission fluid breaks down with use, and although it may look fine, its additives wear out and it can no longer properly protect bands, clutches, seals, and other hugely expensive parts inside your transmission. Bottom line, more wear and a shorter transmission life. Now you can significantly extend transmission life with a BG transmission flush every 24 to 30,000 miles or 2 years. BG makes the best transmission flush machine I've ever tested. It renews all of the fluid in your transmission, not just a small part of it. The BG transmission flush machine is safe too, because it uses the natural circulation of the transmission. Your transmission will work better and last longer. As with everything BG offers, this is a superior service. For more information, go to bgprod.com or bgfindashop.com.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
Folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. And for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. All right, 844-885-4677 if you have any kind of a mechanical question about cars or boats or whatever it might be. Interesting question from the control room, and that was concerning lots of strange things going on in a car. Things like horns honking and wipers not working and properly and different things like that. Well, keep in mind that anything that operates through a stalk on the steering column or a button on the steering wheel typically goes through a device called a clock spring. All right, now what in the world is a clock spring? Well, a clock spring is a piece of wire that is in a coil underneath the steering wheel. Now, because the airbag has to be hardwired, you have to have a piece of wire coming from the airbag down into the steering column and from there into the car's computer system. All right. Now, the way this works is that this coil of wire, you turn the steering wheel in one direction and it pulls wire out of this coil so that the steering wheel can turn it in the other direction, and it spools back into this coil so that we're extending it and then wrapping it back into the clock spring time after time, every time we turn the steering wheel. Well, some cars, like Chrysler, for instance, some of their cars have had a lot of problems with them, and a lot of those cars are under a lifetime recall. So if you happen to have a Chrysler that has a few years on it and the clock spring fails, go online to safercar.gov and see if the lifetime recall applies to your particular car. You see, lots of times dealers, and I can't say that they know or don't know, but you would think that they would know of something like this. Lots of times they don't bring it up to you. And here you're looking at a $300 to $600 repair. And guess what? If the dealer is doing it and can charge you and then charge the manufacturer under warranty, well, they're doubling what they're making on that job. So, you know, I don't know why these things happen. I'm certainly not saying that dealers are dishonest, because they typically are not. Of course, there are some, just like there are independents and chain stores and all the rest of it, and doctors and lawyers and you name it, accountants, and all of us There are a certain percentage of people that like to get over. They don't want to work for what they get, and they try to take advantage of other people. So, anyway, that clock spring, when you start getting strange things going on, you may get an airbag light, you may have a problem with the horn, you may have a problem with the cruise control, you may have a problem with the windshield wipers in some cases. You may have a problem with, say, volume control for the radio because it's got a button there on the steering wheel. All of these things work through the clock spring on most cars. So one of the very first things you look at when you've got these strange problems going on that, you know, they may not seem related to you because, gee, what do the wipers have to do with the horn? Well, they're sharing that same clock spring wiring, and if the clock spring wiring has bared or something like that, and you got two wires touching together, turn the wipers on and it honks the horn every time the wipers go back and forth, weird stuff like that, the first thing you do is check the clock spring. You don't go into testing all sorts of different things. You test the clock spring. So these are things that are relatively common and things that you certainly want to look at because they can save you a lot of money. And remember, check safercar.gov on a lot of these things because you'll find that there will be recalls and so on. And you should be up to speed on recalls. Now, something that we do and a lot of your better shops do, every car that comes in, we have to have the VIN number, vehicle identification number. We have to have the VIN number in order to enter the car into our programming. So what we do is we just link that VIN to the recall database, and it tells us if there are any open recalls on your individual car. And then we give that information to you when you pick up your vehicle or when we talk to you. That way, we keep you apprised of recalls all the time, and recalls are typically going to be free of charge. So we give you the information to go back to the dealer and get this thing handled under a free recall. So, you know, better shops, that's what they do. That's the way this is supposed to work. We're in an information society, and that's what we have to deliver. There's two things a good shop can deliver. That's information, number one, and that means that we can explain things to you so that you learn about your car and so on. We can give you information about recalls and different things like that so that you can save money. And the second thing that a good shop, any good shop can give you is good service. You see, if you were to come here to my shop, within probably 10 miles, there's probably over 100 different repair shops. Now, what can I offer that is different than the other 99? Well, you can go to any one of the 100 shops and you can buy your spark plugs or your brake pads or whatever. What do I have or any other high-end, good quality shop? What do we all have to offer? Better service by explaining things, by following all of the steps, like doing a brake job. You know, a lot of places do what's called a pad slap. And that's simply remove the calipers, slap some new pads in it, send the car down the road. Don't lubricate the caliper slides. Don't dress using a file. Don't dress the caliper slides. Don't put the anti-squeal material on the surface of the pads Don't put the anti-noise material on the backs of the pads and all of these different things. Don't lube the calipers with the special caliper lube. You got all of these different things that should be done to make a brake job an effective job that is quiet and smooth and so on. Well, these are the things that good shops offer, where the people who do the pad slap on the $89 brake job, they don't offer any of this, plus they give you substandard parts, so you wind up with something that may be noisy and in an emergency doesn't stop like it should. So don't look just at price on these things, because price can be deceiving. What are you getting for what you are paying? That's the key. Not just that it costs you $89. Are you getting $49 worth of work for your 89 bucks? Or are you getting $150 worth of work for your 89 bucks? You know, that's the big difference here. So anyway, these are things that you should be aware of when you're selecting a shop. And remember that there are other things that you can do that help you pick the proper shop. You want to look for certifications. Is the shop, are the techs certified? Are they ASE certified? Are they simply factory certified? What is their status? And remember, when you're dealing with a certified shop, like my shop is a Blue Seal, ASE Blue Seal shop, which means that we're top of the top and that we subscribe to certain practices that ASE likes and different things like that. But the key is look for a certified shop, preferably an ASE Blue Seal certified shop. Then make sure that the technician that's going to work on your car is certified in the type of work that you need done. All right, so what do I mean there? Well, let's say you're bringing your car in and it needs brake work. Well, okay, this shop has 10 or 15 technicians. They're certified in different areas. So you need a brake job. You're looking for a technician, a master tech that is certified in brakes, not somebody who is certified in engine performance, but not brakes. So you want the certification of the technician to match what you're having done. So, you know, it's matching up the technician to what your car needs. All right, 98 1500 Chevy truck sometimes pulls down when started. Called the gentleman, and pulled down means cranks slowly like it has a dead battery, because pulls down certainly is not a mechanical term. Now, pulls down when started. I have changed the starter 3 times. Oh boy. New battery, new cable, and ground connections. Someone said it may be the ignition switch going bad. It randomly does it. The truck has 115,000 miles and has never been wrecked. No one knows what to try next. This is from Mark. Well, Mark, here's the thing. You need to have somebody that knows how to test. That's the first thing. Because there's a rule as far as what you do with cars. You got a car that comes in with a problem. What do? You test to find the cause of the problem. You test it. And that means in a lot of cases, like this one, you may have to do something to make it go into this failure mode. Then you test it while the problem is going on. Now, once you've done that, you're going to perform the repair that is indicated by the test. Then the final step is going to be that you are going to retest it using the same equipment, same steps and everything that you did before you fixed it. So you want to identify the problem through testing. You want to perform the repair. Then you want to verify the repair through retesting. So find the problem through testing, perform the repair, then retest to make sure the problem is gone. So in this particular case, I would expect, because this is an older GM truck, one of the very most common things that we saw on those was bad battery cables. No, we're not talking about something that looks bad on the outside. And then, of course, you compound it because you read someplace that bad battery cables are a common problem on older GM trucks. So you go out, you go to the local parts store, and you buy this happy-go-lucky little battery cable that isn't worth the powder it would take to blow it to kingdom come. All right, what are we talking about? Well, wire in battery cables or any kind of wire, its size determines how much electrical energy can flow through it. And its size is determined by numbers. Let's say 18 is a very fine wire, and 0 is a big fat wire, like a battery cable. All right, so what goes on here? Well, you go buy the cheapest battery cable in town. What do you wind up with? Well, you wind up with a battery cable that looks exactly the same because there's a lot of plastic in the insulation material. It's thick. But inside, where a good battery cable might have a number 4 wire, big fat wire in it, this has a number 8 wire, 8 gauge wire, real thin by comparison. So you go out and you buy this new battery cable that, like I say, isn't worth the powder to blow it up, and you put it on your vehicle, and what happens? Exactly the same thing that happened with the bad battery cable, because the wire inside that insulating material isn't big enough to carry the amount of electrical energy needed to engage the starter motor and get everything working so that the car will start. So it acts like it has a dead battery, that sound or something like that. So the way you test this is you perform a voltage drop test. And it's amazing how many techs don't know how to do that, but perform a voltage drop test, and that will tell you the condition of your cables and connections and so on, and you can zero in on the problem very easily. Oh my goodness, we have music in the background. That means we have done Goss's Garage yet one more time. I want to thank you so much for listening, and of course thanks to Steve McMillan and George Stockton for operating all the controls back there in the control room and making it possible for me to talk to you. Thank you for listening, and I have a big favor to ask. Please, everybody, drive gently. We'll see ya.